Right. Good evening, Chief Story. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Appreciate you having me, Alex.
So, what I want to do first is I'm just going to do a quick introduction of you before we get started, and then I'll just kind of let you freelance and talk about whatever you like to, and I'll prompt you with some questions here and there. But I just kind of want to get a feel for how things are going with you. Just for those of you that don't know, I've known Jeremy for a lot of years. We met when we were both SWAT officers, and spent a lot of years working together with our two teams. And I have a great deal of respect for him and the work that he's been doing. So let me read your intro here really quickly. Chief Jeremy Story has been with the Las Cruces Police Department since 2007. After graduating from their 38th Academy class, before that, he served as a staff NCO in the United States Marine Corps. He earned his bachelor's degree in criminal justice from New Mexico State University in 2012. Over the years, he's taken on roles like leading the department's academy, SWAT team, and gang unit, and he became chief of police in 2023. He's a master firearms instructor and has earned distinguished shooting titles. In April 2025, he was named Citizen of the Year by the local Chamber of Commerce for his outstanding leadership and commitment to the community. So, as I told you before, that's just a really quick glimpse of what you've done so far. But I'd like to give you an opportunity to just tell us about yourself in your own words, just a little bit.
Yeah, well, first of all, our time together on SWAT, I mean, I was the young guy on SWAT, and you were the person that I looked up to as my mentor, and I still do. So there's not like we were exactly peers during that time, but a lot of good memories from my SWAT days, especially when you were still there next to us, side by side. I've had a lot of opportunity in my career. Been very fortunate to do basically everything I probably wanted to do as a cop. Everything I thought would be cool to do as a police officer. I've had the opportunity to do, and I've had a short career so far. A little over 18 years with the police department, but I've been able to do canine, SWAT, and all the different aspects of SWAT. Went and got my EMT license on the department's dime as part of SWAT. Sniper. I went to when I promoted. I did a patrol sergeant, of course, but I got to run the gang unit, which I took that over from Pat Doyle, who's another legend up there with you. And the gang unit basically did everything. That was cool. We were part of the FBI Safe Streets Task Force. We did a little bit of everything. And then when I promoted it to lieutenant, I did traffic, which it's the last thing I wanted to do as a cop. The things I hate as a cop are kind of all the things that the average state police officer does, which is tickets, DWIs, and crashes. But it was a really good experience. I got to learn things that I never would have probably allowed. I would have sought it out, but I really needed to know it because it was an important part of policing. So I went to traffic for a while, and then I took over the training department or the training director position, which oversees recruiting, hiring, the basic academy, in-service, advanced training, everything. And that's really where my passion is with teaching, instructing, and I think a lot of times that's how you keep officers from getting in trouble. That's how you keep them safe, and that's how we move the profession forward is through training. And then I was selected as a deputy chief for a relatively short time. I think a little less than a year, like 10 and a half months before I became interim chief. So that was probably more compressed of a time frame than I would have wanted. And it's crazy to believe it's been 2.5 years as chief now, if you include that 6 months of interim, because in some ways it's been the longest 2.5 years of my life, and in some ways it's gone by really fast. So that's snapshot.
I can imagine it's like drinking through a fire hose, just a lot going on very quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
So let's go back to you to starting out. What brought you to law enforcement?
Well, the it's not something I actually had picked initially. I my entire teenage years, at least, I wanted to be a Marine. That's all I cared about in high school. I was in junior ROTC specifically to get the head start and get that E2 automatically in the Marine Corps. And that's all I did in high school was prepare to be a Marine. I dated my wife in high school. We had our ups and downs. She did not want me to join the military, so I broke up with her, joined the Marine Corps, and then we got back together. And my entire plan was to be an officer. I went into the Marine Corps right at 17. The month I turned 17, I signed and got my parents to sign. But their agreement was that I would also go to school and become an officer as part of that. That was the agreement. So I went into the Marine Corps Reserves, and then as soon as I got back from training, I started college. I got married, and I think, a corporal when I got married, and I went to officer candidate school through the PLC program. So that's, you go to officer candidate school kind of in between your junior and senior year, and then when you get your degree, you get your commission. So right after I got married, I went to officer candidate school. I found out I was deploying to Iraq with my reserve unit while I was in officer candidate school. Deployed to Iraq. My wife was pregnant when I left, and my daughter was 5 months old when I got back. So that was my first child. And as I got after that experience, my wife's like, "Hey, I don't think I want to do this any longer than you have to." And so right when I was finishing my enlisted contract, we were about to go to Afghanistan. I ended up not staying in the Marine Corps, and the agreement was I'm obviously going to pick my family over the Marine Corps, but I'm going to be a cop then. So if you're not going to want me to be in the Marine Corps for the rest of my career, then I want to be a police officer, and that's how I ended up applying for the Las Cruces Police Department.
And that was where that was. I'm assuming about 2006, 2007.
Yeah, 2006 is when my son was born, and that's when I was making that decision where I would have deployed while he was born. So yeah, right around then is when I was going through the application process for the PD.
So you've worked your way through the department. I know it was kind of a brief period that you did that deputy chief and then interim chief. Now that you are the chief, I know you've been doing a lot of good things there, trying to get things squared away in Las Cruces. I know there's a lot of challenges with that. Can you describe some of the challenges that you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, just in the time that I've been chief, we've kind of had like a perfect storm of bad things that have never happened. I mean, we've lost our first officer in the line of duty pretty early in my time as the chief, less than a year. We had our first officer suicide right after that. One of the officers who had responded to the line of duty death. We had two separate officers charged with either manslaughter or homicide. One, in my opinion, unjustly, and one, unfortunately, that we charged ourselves, I guess you could say. A whole lot of stuff going on that had never happened before. And at the same time, there's all these good things happening. And so we're trying to navigate together all these challenges. And in many ways, it brought the department closer. I think those going through those traumatic experiences reminded us how much we care about each other. Cops tend to beat each other up, sometimes more than we should, sometimes more than our critics. And in the aftermath of those events, you saw a lot of unity, and you saw us kind of have good perspective about what really matters. Now, that doesn't always last as long as you want, but I think we got closer together as a department. Our families got closer. My wife and the deputy chief's wife started a spouse support group, which had never happened because we didn't see the gap until those things happened, and they've been very active in supporting the families. So there's been a lot of good that's come from those tragedies, but of course they'll still hurt forever, and leave a mark on our PD forever.
I've noticed that one of the things that you have done very well that I know a lot of times in law enforcement maybe we don't do as well from the upper levels is maybe the way you communicate with the city and the citizens of the city. People who have concerns that may not typically be very supportive of law enforcement or very critical. What are some of the things that you do to make that seem to flow so well?
Well, and even in conversations with the previous chief, I think he realized that maybe we should have done more of that. But one, I'll talk to anybody. If someone wants to talk, I'll engage in conversation with anyone, especially if it's in good faith. But what I found is that a lot of people don't necessarily want to dislike us. They're ignorant of the truth. And it's a part of our job to educate them about the facts. And we can't expect them to know these things unless we tell them. I remember thinking, even I remember in high school with my best friend, who's also a cop now with LCPD, driving around, you see a traffic stop with four officers on the traffic stop, and you go, "But they got nothing better to do?" Well, because we're ignorant, we don't know better. We don't know that there's not going to be four cops there unless there's probably a reason. And even if there's not, there's a lot going on that we just don't know about. So I made an effort to
Right.
educate the public to the best of my ability, and it's harder than I thought it would be with social media and all these different tools we didn't have before. There's just a lot of misinformation out there you have to counter.
Well, it seems like you've been doing an excellent job of that. Even though we don't even live in the same state anymore, I'm seeing a lot of that and a lot of the positive feedback that you've been receiving. One in particular, there was a gentleman that you all had arrested quite a few times that seem to be coming back and be a constant issue with the citizens and with your department. Can you kind of give a quick overview of that?
And you know, Alex, that New Mexico, unfortunately, is not the best when it comes to how we deal with criminal justice, especially with repeat offenders. And that's been true for a long time. But and so we had this gentleman, Neil Garcia, who's really the poster child of a repeat offender, of a career criminal. This guy had been in documentary specials about being behind bars and treating guards like crap. He had victimized dozens of people in Las Cruces, physically hitting them, put another homeless guy in the hospital by beating him with a pipe for no reason, breaks out windows of businesses with rocks for no reason, including City Hall. And if you look at it, it's crazy. The amount of arrests and felonies he's had, and in the last his whole adult life, the longest he's ever gone without being rearrested is 38 days, and the shortest time is 6 hours. If he's not in jail, 38 days is the longest he's ever made it. And it shouldn't be questionable whether we should deal with this guy or not. But for whatever reason, it was a little controversial. We the federal government stepped in and charged him with some crimes, and hopefully there'll be accountability. We'll see how it plays out.
Can only hope, but that's difficult when it seems like you feel like you're fighting a no-win type of battle. It's just kind of repeating the same steps over and over again and getting no results at all,
Right. Yeah, exactly.
putting you back to zero. So I'm going to pivot just a little bit because I'm sure you get plenty of opportunities to talk about all of the great things that you've done as chief and all of the hard work you do. But if you don't mind, I'd like for you to talk a little bit about your professional shooting and how you've taken that and also applied it to the department and brought that knowledge and that expertise back for your guys.
Well, at the start, at the beginning, I mean, the reality is when I went into the academy, I had no idea what good shooting looked like, what expertise looked like. And I was fortunate to come in at a time where we had a shooting team as a department in 2007, and we had Pat Doyle, who was a grandmaster in 3 divisions already when I started in 2007. And I honestly, I was just blown away by what people were capable of with a handgun, especially, and a rifle. And that really lit a fire in me. I want to be like that someday. And so Pat has been my mentor for my whole career, not just in shooting, but especially in shooting. And he kind of set the tone. He invested in me more than I'll ever be able to repay, more than I can even remember to tell you right now if I tried financially, but just his time, his energy, and that helped me a lot along the way. Now, I of course put in hundreds of hours of my own because I had to do the work myself. He couldn't do it for me, and there's a time probably for 5+ years where I dry fired on average an hour every single day, and I might have one day where I only do like 15 minutes, but I was very consistent in dry firing close to an hour every single day. I didn't get to live fire as much, but dry fire is what did it for me, and I made grandmaster in 1 division and then in a 2nd division. But I've been fortunate to get sponsored by Wilson Combat as a shooter and be very successful at the highest levels of the game. Now, there's a lot of shooters who are better than me. Most of them aren't cops because that's just a reality. Some of the best shooters in the world, or most of the best shooters in the world, are not cops. But I've been on the super squad for USPSA Nationals 3 times, and we'll be on the super squad next year. And it's just been a great experience. I never thought I'd come to this level. I won an IDPA national championship, not this year. I lost it to my teammate this year, but the year before in 2024. So I've had a lot of awesome opportunities because of shooting. And I did it. I started just because I wanted to be a better cop, and that's definitely happened. But it's gone a lot farther than I thought.
So, how long did it take you to become a grandmaster?
Way longer than it should have with the amount of time I put in. I mean, some guys they make grandmaster in like 9 months, less than a year, and they're putting work in too. I'm not discounting it, but I'm just saying like some people do it a lot faster. It took me. I mean, I started shooting like really serious competitive probably late 2016, and I made grandmaster in March of 2020, right before the shutdown. The last match before things shut down for a while, I made grandmaster, my first division.
Well, that's that's hard
Yeah,
luck.
I know. Good timing.
Give you an opportunity to get a lot more dry fire in. you spent all that time training, and of course, you had Pat, who was already doing a lot of instructing for the department. And at what point did you start stepping in and helping with that?
I started teaching really early in my career. Right at a year, I became an apprentice for our force on force unit. And then I started teaching other stuff within the next year or two. So I was teaching all kinds of stuff by like 3 years on, including firearms. And I just I developed it from there. I sought out more responsibility, started teaching more classes, and then eventually became a master instructor. Probably, I think maybe 8 or 9 years ago, something like that.
And now, I know you came from the range today. What type of work are you doing with the officers now? Are you trying to step back a little bit more and let the other instructors lead, or how are you working that now?
Oh, for sure. I don't get out there nearly as much as I would like to. Today we were doing that 16-hour instructor update that's required by New Mexico. So I was out there to help teach one to keep my master instructor, but this is the best time for me is to actually make it out there and interact with the guys. Lieutenant McBride, Pat's still out there. So Lieutenant McBride and Pat are the other master instructors for the department. They're out there doing their thing, but there's a lot of instructors who have stepped up. And every time I go out there, it kind of confirms one, the skill level. I see these guys, it's very proud of them, their skill level, but even probably more important is their ability to teach. And, they obviously have some room for growth, but they're doing great for how young they are. And I probably make it out there. I try to make it out to every academy at least a couple times, just spend a little time at the range with them and then with the instructors at least a couple times a year, but not nearly as often as I would like.
Well, it's great to see the chief in instances like that. Otherwise, it's best that the chief doesn't even know your name. That's usually a good thing, right?
And
So I know Pat has been a huge influence for you in your career. Can you name some memorable moments in your career, things that really stood out for you, that maybe shaped you as an officer or later as the chief?
there's several kind of defining moments. I mean, there's actually a lot of them. Pat specifically has invested in me so much that I'd have a hard time remembering them all. I don't think it's possible. One, even just financially, but his time and his effort and everything else. I can tell you the most important moment in my career, and it's probably my biggest mistake I've ever made. But that is what set me on the course to where I am today, especially when it comes to shooting. And this was probably I was probably a 4 or 5 year officer, maybe 4 years, and I was teaching at the academy. I was very active in, excuse me, teaching already. I'd already started teaching advanced classes for the officers by myself, and we were doing dry fire in our mat room for the academy. And I was in there with a couple other instructors, kind of at my level as far as experience. And I got a call from municipal court to go fix a citation. So I leave, I load up, I go to municipal court. It takes like 2 seconds. I come right back. And when I come back into the mat room, I start talking and I get distracted. And I'm talking to the other instructors. And I go to do a repetition that they're doing. And there's an ND that occurs because I'm still loaded from going to court. And a lot of fallout from that, as you can imagine. That was a very, very humbling experience. Pat Pat wasn't there when we were training. He wasn't there when it happened, but he showed up right after when I called him and told him what happened. Um, he was there for me in ways that other people weren't. He didn't give up on me. He still believed in me. Other people kind of wanted to just toss me to the side, and it was because of that. And he continued to invest in me, but it was because of that moment that I decided I'm already one of the best shooters in the department. I'm going to be the best shooter in the department, and a lot of that was because of the way Pat handled it and the way you responded. And that's what happened. I wouldn't be a national champion today if that hadn't happened to me earlier in my career. That's without a doubt.
That is humbling one, but as a defining moment, that's great that you can take one that you've made a huge mistake, and we're very lucky with the outcome. But then for somebody to step up, because yes, you talked about it earlier. As police, we tend to eat our own, and a lot of people will turn their backs on you and then just shut you out from that point forward. And
Yeah,
I'm not surprised that he stepped up and did that, but I'm glad he did.
yeah, me too.
Following along on that, what advice would you have for young officers as they go forward in their career? And I know it's a lot different than it was maybe back when you started, but a lot of things change, but a lot of things stay the same. What advice would you give to newer officers?
Yeah, I agree. I would say policing today is definitely much harder than it was when I started. There's a lot less grace, a lot less room for error, and which isn't necessarily fair, but it is the way it is. What I would tell a new officer is one, find a mentor, find somebody that you can trust and rely on, but two, invest in yourself and put the work in. Whether your department will pay for training or not, even if they do, there's so much to know to be a good police officer. You have to put the work in yourself, and that means reading books, dry firing, go to jujitsu, um, do the things that are going to make you a better cop and make you safer. Learn the law, memorize things. You should know the Graham factors. You should understand Graham v. Connor, Tennessee v. Connor, all these important case laws that define what you can and can't do as a police officer. Nobody's going to do that for you, and if you want to be successful, lay the foundation early in your career, and it will pay off for the rest of your career.
Absolutely. One of the things I wanted to ask you about also is, we talked about it earlier in some of those significant events that happened right after you became chief. Uh, you had, of course, the officer who was murdered, and then you've had an officer take their own life, and I think that's something that's not very well known by the general public. Just like you said, that there's a lot of, and I don't mean this in a mean way, but there's a lot of ignorance from the public about what officers face. Yeah, they understand that there's bad guys, so to speak, out there that want to hurt you, but a very high number of officers end up taking their own lives either during their career or very shortly after. Are there any initiatives that you're taking, that things that you're trying to do to maybe mitigate that in advance for your officers?
I mean, there's a ton of them, and I think they're important. And we had many of these things before the officer suicide, but we have, of course, a city as EAP, and they've had good people in those positions. Um, we have a psychologist who's on staff that's a contract, a police psychologist we've had forever, and he's available to officers and their families. We started contracting with another company that specifically does public safety, mostly law enforcement, counseling, EMDR, and other services that are available. We pay for it if the insurance doesn't, and it's confidential. We tried different wellness apps. We've tried doing things that are good for mental health, like cold plunge and heat therapy, sauna, and all these different things. Obviously, we have access to multiple gyms that are provided to the officers. I think one of the things that matters most, that's been the most successful, is our peer support team, and along with that, our chaplains. Because the reality is, those professional services are important, but just like we eat our own, sometimes we're the only ones that understand each other at the same time. And so if you have a good peer support team, and it's very important how you do it, because if you lose trust, the program's dead. But peer support can go a long way. And I've seen a lot of interventions happen in the past few years because of peer support, because somebody stepped in and we got someone help, we saved their job. Sometimes we can save their relationships, sometimes we can't. But it could have been a lot worse had somebody not stepped in and been there for them, and then we can get them to the right place, the right resource. In the end, we have to be there for each other, because the public's not going to do that for us. The politicians aren't going to do that for us. We have to show that we actually care about each other. So peer support, when done right, I think is the most important resource.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct. I think that's a fantastic plan to have, because once things start going bad and you start having those feelings, a lot of times having a supervisor come to you feels more like a supervisor coming at you or coming after you, and having a peer that can sit you down and shoot you straight, and just tell you, hey, I'm here. And also maybe to have somebody who's been down that road before and tell you what you're feeling is not weird or strange or weak. It's just part of what you're going through, and here's some things that might help you, and also I'm here for you if you need help. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I think once we've had some people who have done some of these programs and are willing to speak about them, that's been where we start to get rid of the stigma and build success. So they're willing to say, "Hey, I did this, and this changed my life. This helped me get over whatever I was going through." Um, and now that we have a few people that have done that and are willing to speak up, it goes a long way.
I'm so happy to hear that that you're taking those steps to protect your officers, not just out there on the road, but when they're sitting there in the dark by themselves.
Yeah.
You've done a great job of communicating with the citizens, which I think is part of an evolution. Like you said, with social media, and there's a lot of outlets and a lot of ways you have to communicate with them. What are some other things that you see that are going to have to evolve as police in general, and maybe specific to your department going into the future?
I when it comes to just one, how we recruit and retain our cops, that's important. We've done a really good job with recruiting, and we have done a good job with retaining too. But we've lost officers to federal agencies where they get paid more. They have less risk not working for as a New Mexico cop. That's been tough to counter. A lot of it is culture. We provide a culture that people want to be in, and sometimes they have nothing to compare it to, so it's hard to for them to know exactly what they have. But we provide officers with, I believe, top-notch training, both internally as well as we send people out. We bring in classes all the time. We host classes. We provide, awesome equipment that helps keep them safe and helps them do their job. And all those things add up. But culture really matters. You have to be, I mean, you got to want to do this job. It is harder than it's ever been. Being on the streets now versus when I started is completely different. Technology is a big part of that, and it's been good for us, and it's also bad for, I mean, it makes the job harder in some ways and it makes it easier in other ways. And it's a reality, though. We're not going to change it. It's only going to become more and more a part of policing. And we have to kind of embrace that while keeping some guardrails in place. And that's going in the future. It's technology is big. Our real time crime center has been like an example that's an awesome tool, but where there's going to come a time where we're going to have to find the balance as we start to add more and more technology to it.
Well, I can say from the outside looking in that your agency has always done a fantastic job of training your officers and sending them out to outside training and trying different things.
Yeah, I agree. And that's not because of me. That's because of the training environment that I got to come into and just help continue over the years. So it's because of people like Pat and Ralph Monjet and all the giants that came before me. They made that was the norm. That was the culture. We had a culture of training. We've had to adapt because we learn new things. We learn better methods. So it's not the same as it was when I started, but we try to always be kind of at the cutting edge of what police training should be. And I think we're still there and still pushing.
What I saw with that is not only did you all get that training and send your officers out to that training, but when you all would come back, you were more than willing to, as an agency, share that with other agencies and other officers. I benefited from that, and I know a lot of my guys benefited from that. And I think as two agencies working together, it really made us strong working together. It was wonderful to be a part of that, and I had like a lot of tradition in the agencies. My dad was part of your agency back in the '60s, and I'm a fourth generation officer. So it's wonderful to see all that everybody's still working together, and I think it's only going to get better as time goes on.
It is so important. And I love being able to offer free spots or free training to the officers around us. And I love being able to send my officers to state police SWAT basic or APD SWAT basic. And I think we all benefit from that. And the reality is every time something really bad happens, we tend to be standing side by side. And so the training needs to be done, the relationships need to be built, and the training needs to be done ahead of time, not when everything's going bad.
I think it's worth noting that I know when I first got down there to Las Cruces, we all got together, Monjet and Doyle and me, and we got with the other agencies, and we all sat together and said, look, at some point we're going to have to start working together. We're going to be forced into it, so maybe we should start training together. And it was really your agency and us that jumped at it first, and it seemed to have formed a bond. I know we were already doing that with Albuquerque, and it seems that bond has continued. That we're well past 20 years of doing that now, probably 25 years, and
Yeah.
it was great to be a part of that.
No, we have to. I mean, we need each other, especially down here when you look at just kind of the environment, especially when it comes to the SWAT stuff, the tax side. I mean, we need you guys standing next to us. And there's times where your team's state police is tied up north and we don't get any guys. But most of the time, there's a group of us and a group of state police, and we're just integrated side by side working together. That's the way it was when I started on the team, and that's the way it is now. We have our disagreements, of course, just like we do internally, but that relationship has to continue. I mean, we need each other.
Talking real quickly about technology, I know there's a lot of um, gizmos, cameras, and recording devices, and license plate readers. What are some other significant changes in technology that have helped you out?
I think even since you left, when you left, did you guys have drones at all?
They were not on the agency, no.
Okay. So I think in 2018 we started our field deployment of drones, and we grew our pilots and our program very quickly. Lieutenant McBride spearheaded that and has done a phenomenal job with the scope of it and what they are capable of doing. And now with the real time crime center, drone as a first responder has changed the game completely. And the real time crime center technicians are launching and flying these drones, getting there ahead of officers, being able to tell us what's going on or tell the officers what's going on before they even get 97 on scene. And one, it makes the officer safer, it makes the public safer, technically makes the suspect safer, because if they got something in their hand and the drone can tell the officer what it is before they even get there, it makes it safer for everyone. And we're only a few months into this, but we have seen tons of success with that program already, and we're just going to expand it.
That's amazing. I didn't know that you all had anything like that. My thought still on the drones was that mostly they were being used on SWAT calls just to document what was happening. But that sounds like I did not know that they were responding and oftentimes beating the officers to the calls. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. The goal is to get them there to a priority call in less than 2 minutes. A lot of times they're already on scene in about a minute before the officer gets there. So it's been
That's
really
amazing.
successful.
That's fantastic. That sounds like a great technology. Any other new technology that you all acquired?
A lot of it is how it just integrates together. I mean, the body cams for our officers with Axon now integrate with the drones. They can launch a drone from their body cam to their location. Like the fact that everything's starting to integrate is really cool to see. The data sharing and how data integrates. State police actually with DPS led this intelligence led policing project. And with that system, now we can start to get a better picture of what's going on across the state. We can share data and intelligence, and basically it pulls all the different sources, because probably even when you left you had like six different logins for different software. Well, now it's like 12. You have all these different programs with different applications, and one of the systems we're using kind of integrates all of them together, so I can do one query and I can pull all of it. So I can look up aggravated assaults for 2025, and then I get all the lists, and then I can click on it and pull up the body cam, and then I can see how that person was also involved in this auto theft, and everything really integrates. And now we're doing that with agencies across the state. So that's a cool thing we're seeing in the last year or so.
Most agencies are already involved in that within the state.
I think all the big ones: Albuquerque, Bernalillo, Farmington, San Juan, us. So, and there's others as well. You're starting to see that picture start to come together.
Where do you see things going for you as far as the rest of the next couple of years with the agency? What do you want to see happen with the city and with the agency?
A couple things. One, I would like to get to 220 officers, which is what we're budgeted for. I think if we do that, we'll have a lot of options that we don't have right now. I have 24 that are on in field training right now that graduate or finish field training next month, and that will change stuff for us right there. But I would like to get to 220, and so that's one thing. Staffing, continue the training and pushing that, continue the integration with real time. We just started where we're doing a project right in the middle of called stratified policing, which is taking all the evidence we know about what works to reduce crime and what doesn't, and how do you actually operationalize it so officers get used to doing it day to day. Just like call response becomes a norm. Since 911 was invented in the 60s, officers, policing is responding to calls. Well, there's a lot of stuff we can, that's important. There's a lot of stuff we can do that's not that, that's proactive, that reduces crime. So stratified policing is how do we make that normal as part of our day-to-day tasks. That's a project we're doing right now. And that's going to take years to make normal, but I want to continue that. Um, the wellness stuff, a lot of it is the education of the public. So we just brought on a second PIO, public information officer, that starts in January. I really want to start pushing out the positive. Like, there's so many things that officers do that are like amazing that we just, it's not because we don't want to, it's just we don't have time to put it together and just put it out there. I want to start putting out more of the positives of what police officers are doing, along with the negative, the crime, the different things that we need to be honest about. But hopefully we can kind of balance it and tell the complete story of what these officers are doing. Because in spite of all the just all the different requirements that cops have, and basically to be perfect, that's the expectation, even from us sometimes in admin, because just the way everything's set up. And in spite of that, 99% of the time, 98% of the time, they somehow deliver. But the public doesn't see that. They see the 1 or 2% where they fail. They're human beings. There's always going to be some percentage of failure. If we start showing a lot more of the 98%, I think it helps balance that out.
Do you feel like these initiatives that you're taking as the chief and as an agency, do you feel like you're an anomaly? Because it seems to me like you're way out there ahead, really taking this initiative, and you're at the leading edge of these changes in attitude and strategy. Or are there a lot of other chiefs that are really trying to take this same sort of attack as you?
I think there are, part of it is communication and messaging. I think if there's one lesson I've learned, how you communicate to the officers and making sure that the message is received the way you intend is really important. Because I think a lot of times that's the disconnect. The chiefs actually have the right motives and are trying to do the right thing, and the message just gets degraded and messed up. Sometimes maybe the chief's not doing the right thing, but a lot of times I think they are trying. So that's part of it, is making sure that you're actually getting that communicated down to the officers. So I think there are a lot of other ones, other chiefs and other departments that are trying to do these things. Um, I set very high expectations for the officers, and I think they know that. But one thing that Pat taught me early on, and I've seen it time and time again with the way he interacts, even on the range or in any other training environment, is if you set high expectations, people tend to rise to those expectations if you push them. There's a term in psychology, the Rosenthal effect, and that's really what it is. I mean, he would set these ridiculous standard for like a recruit. You're like at 60 yards on a piece of steel, like a 12-inch piece of steel, and he's like, all right, I want to see it in under 1-2 from the holster. Like, yeah, this is like 20 hours into firearms training, and somehow they would do it like 9 times out of 10. So I think setting high expectations is really important for the officers, and giving them the tools to meet them, holding them accountable when they don't, but with some grace. That means providing more training, providing mentorship, unless there's like a mistake of the heart where they're doing something unethical or immoral. And that is the difference in a high performing department and one that's kind of average.
Well, definitely having that great leadership and mentorship as well. Not just
Yeah.
barking orders at people, but cultivating them and their skills. I love to hear that, and it doesn't surprise me at all that Pat does things like that. Kind of a wrap up question for you is what motivates you, because you've accomplished so many things, and it seems to me like you're just getting started. What's your core motivation?
Couple things. First and foremost is my relationship with God. I it's been a rough 2.5 years. I'm not gonna lie. I've been beat down as many times as I've been encouraged. That's for sure, if not more. So that's part of it. I think a lot of it is, and then so I should say, second is the support I have from my wife and my family. Like I don't know how chiefs do it if they're single. Like having her in my corner has made the difference every single time. And then the third thing is that I grew up in this agency. This is my agency. I was training director before I became a deputy chief. So I was with those cadets every single day. And so I had the fortune of being a lieutenant, but also knowing the officers pretty well. And that's a huge advantage for me as a chief. Now, the last few academies, I don't have quite the same relationship, but up until relatively recently, I did. And I care about these people. I've been around my whole career in this agency. I've been afforded so many opportunities, and I love this agency and I love the people in it. I think it would be a lot harder to go to another agency where I'd never worked, become chief or be chief, and still have the same motivation. I'm just gonna be honest. I think that's a hard thing to do. And I know a lot of people do it, and probably something that needs to be done some places, but I think that's a huge disadvantage to come in, not know people, and not have that connection. Having it motivates me to do the best I can for those officers while I'm here.
I think that's a good point that you bring up. And outside looking in again, I see it here with the large agency and the big city that we're next to. Is they've typically brought in chiefs from the outside and a lot of the other large agencies in this state. And it seems to be a hard road for both the chief and for the personnel to get over that hump. I'm really proud to see that you've been given that opportunity to show proof of concept that it does work when you bring somebody from within the ranks that knows the culture, and it's important to maintain that culture. You know, we always had that within our agency is it's a very specific culture and the way the tradition that we have. Sometimes it may slow progress, but I think it's also important to maintain that, which becomes difficult when you bring people in from the outside. So I hope that it gives everybody a very good perspective on how well you've done and how well you'll continue to do that. That you can show that it's working well.
Yeah, I agree. We've my entire career, half the chiefs have been internal, half the chiefs have been external, and all the external ones have been rough. Not even because they're bad people or they're bad chiefs. It just again, by the time they kind of figure out what's going on, who's who, how everything's structured, they leave. And they make a lot of decisions before they understand those things. Whereas internal, you already have that knowledge. So I hope when I leave that somebody, whoever replaces me, is from the inside. I would hate for someone to come from the outside, but it's an advantage in my opinion.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and we'll start wrapping this up. Is there anything else that you wanted to add before we finish it out?
No, I appreciate the opportunity, Alex. It's always good to catch up with you and see you and remember the good old days when I actually got to have fun as a cop. Thank you for all your mentorship for the not so much for the runs when we would do the long runs together. Never my not the things I like doing, but it was again humbling to get smoked by you every once in a while at least. And of course, the guys like Pat and Ralph Monjet, and there's so many Eddie Villarreal who's still around too that kind of paved the way for me, and some of them are still at it. So I can never repay the debt I owe to them.
Well, it's fantastic to know that those guys are still going at it and still going strong. The runs I would not be able to beat you on anymore. By the way,
I
I'm not sure that that happens
still
very
doubt
often,
that,
anyhow.
but
But but it's been wonderful. I appreciate you taking the time to visit with me. I know you are incredibly busy, and but I just want to say I'm proud that to see all the great work you've done there in Las Cruces. You know, that's my hometown, and I know that you genuinely want to make things better there, and I think you are doing a fantastic job. But thank you again for taking the time out to visit with me.
I really appreciate you having me, Alex. And it's been great talking with you.
All right. Well, we will catch up with you soon.